September 14th, 1942. Dusk, southwestern edge of Stalingrad. Wind off the Volga carrying dust and brick grit, the taste of plaster and cordite and someone else's fire. The sun is dropping behind the ruined factories, and what used to be streets are now trenches. What used to be houses are now angles, jagged ribs of brick and rebar. Windows don't have glass anymore. They're just black squares. Every black square could be a muzzle. You're hearing tanks. Not a lot, not a whole column. Just 2 or 3, cautious, moving slow, gears complaining, metal clunk echoing off smashed walls. That echo makes them sound bigger than they are. You're also hearing boots. That matters more. Boots means infantry. And infantry means the real problem is not the front of the tank. It's the wake behind it. Hiding 3 floors up in a torn-open apartment block that doesn't have a roof anymore is a man who hasn't spoken in almost an hour. He has a rifle across his knees and a cigarette that burned out long ago between his lips. He doesn't notice. He's not smoking it. He just needs the shape of it, the weight of it, the way it sets his jaw. He has been still long enough for ash to cling to his collar. He's been in the same position so long his leg went numb twice, came back twice, then stopped complaining. He's waiting for a German officer. He's already killed 3 today. He's not counting out of pride. He's counting because he needs to know the pattern. His name is not important to history in the way generals' names get remembered, and in truth, there were several men like him. Soviet snipers in Stalingrad. The Red Army's answer to an enemy that could push forward on paper but had to actually walk forward in reality. Men pulled off the line, handed scopes, told, "You will slow them." Not stop them, slow them. He intends to do both. The Germans coming up this block are not just anybody. They're not green. By now in Stalingrad, almost nobody is green. These are assault troops. Men who've gone block to block, wall to wall, doorway to doorway, clearing this city meter by meter with grenades and flame, and MG-34s you can pick up and run with. They move with the confidence of men who've done this 10 times and lived. That confidence is what he is going to break. He shifts his weight just enough to settle his cheek to the stock. The rifle is a Mosin Nagant 9130, scoped. Soviet standard, long, heavy, bolt action, 5-round internal magazine. The scope is offset slightly, which means you don't center your face like a modern sniper. You learn a different weld. You learn a different hold. You learn to see slightly left of the barrel and trust you've already calibrated that. He has. This is not his first day. The barrel rests on the busted-out windowsill. The sill is concrete, cold, gritty. He has wrapped a rag there so the barrel doesn't kiss raw stone. Metal on stone talks. He doesn't want to talk. His left hand is under the forestock, right hand on the wrist. Breath slow, eyes soft. You never stare hard through glass. You let the sight float. You let the picture settle around the crosshair instead of stabbing at it. He watches the German point element come into view. 2 infantrymen first, helmets low, carbines up. One of them has a stick grenade tucked into his belt sideways. The other keeps cutting his eyes to the rooftops. Good discipline, scanning angles. Behind them, a chunk of steel eases forward around the corner. Not a Tiger, not here, not yet, not in this street. This is something lighter, a Panzer III, maybe a 4. Doesn't matter. What matters is the way it's being used. Nose first, slow, cannon pointed down the street like a flashlight, infantry hugging its sides to use its armor as a moving wall. They're coming block by block, clearing, probing, testing. And if they get through here, if they punch through this little knot of resistance on this little stretch of city, they can open the way for more. That more is where Soviet command starts to sweat. Because if more gets to the Volga, the Soviets can't resupply. If they can't resupply, they can't hold. If they can't hold, Stalingrad falls. And if Stalingrad falls, Moscow knows this war just tilted. That is the scale on paper. This is the scale in the window. 1 man with a rifle. 6 Germans in view. More behind them. An armored nose. Rubble that will magnify any mistake. He is not here to shoot random soldiers. He does not waste bullets on rank and file until he has to. He is here to shoot the brainstem. Officers first, radio men if he sees them, machine gun crews if they try to set up. Anyone giving hand signals. This is how you stop an advance without artillery. You don't outgun it, you decapitate it. The Germans pause. The lead point man raises a fist. Signal to hold. Good, the sniper thinks. Show me who he's talking to. 3 more men emerge behind the tank's left track, and one of them stands straighter, not crouched, scanning with field glasses, pointing down the block like he's drawing a map in the air. That's him. That's the one. The sniper exhales, not all at once, just enough to drop tension out of his shoulders. The reticle settles on the German's upper chest, high. You never aim center mass at this range in a city because debris can rob you of inches. You aim high. You aim where bone meets artery and command meets silence. The sniper's finger tightens. He does not jerk. He does not slap. He does not pull. He adds pressure until the rifle decides to go off. Crack. The sound is violent in the room, then swallowed by the building, then ricochets down the empty hallway like a fist hitting a steel door. Down in the street, the German officer folds like a coat dropped off a chair. He doesn't scream. He doesn't point. He just stops being vertical. The reaction is instant, not from panic, but from training. The Germans scatter to cover, behind the tank, into doorways, behind a half-collapsed wall where some family's kitchen table still sits under plaster dust. The tank swings its turret. The sniper is already not there. He slides back from the window, keeping himself below the line of the sill, and moves to his second position. Same room, different firing angle. He set this up earlier. He broke plaster silently with the butt of his rifle so he'd have a second needle to poke through. He does not run. He slides across debris, staying on his elbows and thighs, letting his body find the gaps he memorized. Down below, the tank opens up. The main gun is too much for this. They're not trying to waste high explosive on a ghost. But the coaxial machine gun, that sings. Long bursts rip through the room he was just in, kicking out dust clouds, turning wallpaper into smoke. Tiny geysers of shattered bricks spit into the air where his head was. He doesn't flinch at the noise. He's past flinching. He cycles the bolt, spent casing out, fresh round in. He listens for shouting. German, not Russian. He waits for someone to try and fix the chaos. Because that's what happens next always. An NCO will step in. A sergeant. Somebody will reassert order, gesture, get the squad moving again. That's target number 2. He looks through the alternate hole, different angle, slightly lower, across the rubble, to where one of the Germans is waving men into a doorway, yelling, trying to get them off the street so the sniper doesn't get a second kill in the open. He lines him up. Breath. Crack. Second body drops halfway behind cover. The fall is ugly this time. Limbs kick. A helmet spins. Now the panic starts. Now it's not just we're taking fire. Now it's we are being hunted and whoever is shooting us knows what he's doing. Fear spreads through units like smoke. Slow at first, then all at once when it finds a draft. And this street is a draft. The Germans pull back briefly. That briefly is everything. That buys minutes. Minutes are everything. Because here's what Soviet command needs in Stalingrad in September '42. Time. Not victory, not glory. Time. Time for one more anti-tank rifle team to get into a basement around the corner. Time for one more machine gun to get sandbags in a window at the crossing. Time for one more runner to carry ammo crates across open ground before it's suicide. Time for a lieutenant with a broken nose and a bandaged ear to get on a field phone and say, "They're coming up Tractor Street. Get me 2 mortars on grid." The sniper just bought that, alone, with 2 shots. He knows it, but he doesn't let himself feel it. Feeling it gets you killed. He keeps working. The Germans switch tactics now. They've taken 2 losses and they haven't identified the shooter. So they do what trained infantry do. They try to flank. The Panzer inches forward to cover the street ahead with its gun. Meanwhile, a 4-man fire team breaks off, moves fast down a side alley like a shadow slipping around the edge of a door, planning to come up behind the sniper's building and clear it from the rear. That's smart. That's exactly what he would do. So he planned for that too. He leaves his position, quiet, patient. His knees and elbows are already bleeding through the uniform. He doesn't feel it. He crawls into the hallway past a cracked mirror that still reflects part of someone's hallway wallpaper. There are family photos still on the floor here, faces in black and white, a wedding portrait under dust and shoe prints. He slides down one step of broken stairs, then another, then another. He stops on the landing between floors. He has a view down into the back corridor now, a choke point, blown half open by shelling. He can hear them, boots on loose plaster, German voices, low, focused, professional. They're not shouting now. They know they might be walking into something. They are. He knows this shot has to count. No time for careful repositioning this time. No time for 2, 3 attempts. If he misses here, he'll be pinned in a stairwell with nowhere to go. They throw in a grenade, he's done. He knows it, so he waits until the first helmet appears in the doorway below. Not the whole body, just the top of the head and a sliver of face behind the MP40. He fires. At this distance, inside the building, it's not a crack. It's a slap, a punch, a door slam in a coffin. The lead German goes down backward into the man behind him. Instant pile. The corridor jams for half a second. Half a second is a lifetime in a staircase ambush. The sniper doesn't try to kill all 4. He doesn't have to. He cycles the bolt with muscle memory and fires again at the leg of the second man. Not chest, not head, just above the knee. Hit, scream. Now you have a screaming man and a body on top of him in a hallway. The other 2 are stuck behind that. They have to choose. Risk exposure to drag them back, or back out and regroup. They choose to back out. They throw a grenade anyway, angry, blind. But it lands too shallow, bangs in the corridor below him, throws dust, makes the staircase ring, but doesn't reach him. He pulls back deeper into shadow, coughs once into his sleeve to muffle it, and goes still. Up above, out in the street, the tank is blind now. It's got no infantry screen. It can push forward, but if it does, it risks getting hit with an anti-tank rifle or a bundled grenade charge at close range. Tanks hate being alone in cities. They hate it. Armor is king in the open. In rubble, armor becomes a coffin without friends. The tank reverses 2 meters. That tiny reverse, that's tactical momentum bleeding. That is a German armored element giving back ground. That is rare here. He just forced it. 1 rifle, 1 stairwell, 1 man. Now pause here. Let's talk about why this works. This isn't magic. This isn't movie heroics. This is doctrine meeting desperation. By this phase of the battle for Stalingrad, Soviet command had figured something out. You do not beat the Wehrmacht head-on in open maneuver with perfect timing and full strength. You slow it. You disrupt it. You splinter it. You make every corner hurt. You make every forward step cost nerves and time and blood. And you especially target leaders. German assault groups are efficient because they are organized. They move like a hand. Fingers, palm, wrist, forearm. You break the wrist, the hand can't grip. Snipers like this one were told, break the wrist. You kill officers and NCOs. You don't just drop a shooter, you drop initiative. Who gives the next order? Who points the next direction? Who calls the tank forward? Who coordinates with the squad 2 houses over? For 10 seconds, no one. For 30 seconds, no one. For a minute, no one. And while they're figuring it out, Soviet positions reshuffle, reinforce, reposition. And sometimes that minute saves a block. And sometimes that block slows an entire regiment. And sometimes that regiment was the regiment that was supposed to punch through to the river. And sometimes the punch stalls. That's how a sniper can stop and advance. Not forever, not everywhere. But right now, right here, long enough to matter. He reloads now. He's burned 4 rounds. He has 1 left in the magazine and 10 more loose in his pouch. He feeds the rifle with fingers that can barely feel anymore from the cold and the vibration. His mouth is dry, not from fear, from dust. Stalingrad dust is not like clean dirt. It's brick powder and human ash and plaster and insulation and ground glass. You breathe it and you can taste other people's houses. He swallows. It hurts. He goes back up 1 level, not to the same shooting hole, to a third that he knocked out earlier by quietly prying 2 more bricks from a collapsed wall. Now he has an angle farther down the street. He can see the intersection past the Panzer's nose, and that's when he spots something new. A radio man. Big backpack set, antenna sticking up, helmet at an angle because the pack strap is digging into his neck. Radio men are gold. You drop that guy and you don't just cut local orders. You cut higher level coordination. You cut artillery requests. You cut "we are stuck" from reaching "send help." He lines up. Breath. Crack. The radio man spins and falls like a marionette whose strings just snapped all at once. The set on his back hits the pavement with a clanging thud that echoes down the block. Another German lunges to grab the radio. Good instinct. Dangerous instinct. He half stands to yank it off his friend's back. The sniper almost shoots him too, but doesn't. Why? Because he can't see the full body. He doesn't gamble unless he has to. Each bullet is a decision with cost and consequence. He holds. He lets the helper drag the radio behind the tank. He lets them huddle there. That huddle is fear. That huddle is delay. That huddle is victory measured in seconds. Now down on the Soviet side of the street, just out of view, a 20-year-old machine gunner with a DP-28 light machine gun, the one with the big round pan magazine on top, has been lying behind a blown-out stair foundation, face in the dirt, waiting for exactly this. He's been told, don't fire until they clump. Don't waste your pan. You fire when they're bunched, or when they break, they're bunched. He squeezes. The DP-28 chatters with a flat, dragging bark, sweeping low across the street at knee height. German boots scramble. Sparks jump off the tank's side armor. One of the Germans dives and doesn't get up. Now the Germans are fully pinned. Not slowed, pinned. Pinned is different. Pinned is nobody moves for 30 seconds because moving equals death. Pinned is this advance is over until someone brings smoke, mortars, or a new plan. Pinned is you are not taking this block in the next 5 minutes. Pinned is call it off, regroup, try a different street. Pinned, and for now, is no. That no echoes way above this corner, because here's what you have to remember. These little street fights weren't private. Commanders were watching the clock. German officers had timetables. At 1700 hours, Objective X must be cleared. At 1745, link with Y, get it done. Keep pressure, push, push, push. When a single block doesn't fall on time, the pressure moves upward. A battalion commander radios regimental command. Heavy resistance. We're delayed. Regiment radios division. Encountered sniper and MG nest. Casualties among command staff. Resistance high. Requesting additional armor. Division says, why are you behind schedule? Now they're arguing. They don't like arguing during an offensive. Meanwhile, on the Soviet side, some exhausted political officer is sketching on a city map with a blunt pencil, circling a half-ruined block with a shaking hand saying, they held here for 40 minutes. That circle is going to get reported up too. Not as Sniper did this. It'll just get reported as Sector continues to hold. But in reality, it's him. He did that. Now let's go back to him. He hasn't moved in 2 minutes. His throat burns from dust. His shoulder aches from recoil. His ears are ringing. His heartbeat is finally loud. He knows, absolutely knows, they're coming for him again. Because they have to. Once German infantry realize they're sitting under unseen fire, they will not just back off and shrug. That's not how these guys work. They will identify, fix, eliminate. That means someone is about to try the back stairwell again. Maybe a different angle. Maybe through the neighboring building, then across the attic. Maybe with grenades first this time. He doesn't plan to still be here when they do it. He knows this building is now hot, which means staying in it is suicide. A good sniper position isn't just where you can see, it's where you can disappear. So now he does something that sounds insane but isn't. He leaves, not the area, just the building. He slings the rifle across his chest, muzzle down. He keeps low, moves through a jagged hole in the wall, and out across a collapsed balcony where the railing is twisted rebar and hanging laundry wire. There are still shirts on that line, frozen in dust, stiff like ghosts mid-turn. He moves into the skeleton of the next building over. 3 meters of open exposure. 3 meters where, if anyone had eyes on that alley, he'd be cut in half. He does it anyway, because the longer he stays in one hunting perch, the more likely he's the hunted. Inside the next ruin, silence. He finds a corner with a view not of the Germans now, but of the rear approach to his old nest. He aims there, waits, listens, and sure enough, 30 seconds later, 2 Germans slip in from the backside, hugging wall, MP-40s up, moving the way men move when they know death is in the house, but they haven't found the exact room yet. He could kill them. He doesn't. He lets them go past, because that's not his job anymore. His job was to stop the push. He already did. Now let's freeze frame that exact moment and talk about the bigger picture, because it's easy to hear this and think, cool story. One guy slowed one street. How is that stopped an entire advance? Here's how. Urban combat is not like open field combat. In open country, you can bypass resistance. If someone digs in on a hill, you go around them and keep going. In a city like Stalingrad, you can't go around. Every block is interlocked. Every street is a funnel. If you try to bypass, you expose your flank to the same kind of hidden fire you just took. You can't just leave an angry hornet's nest at your side and stroll past it to the river. You have to clear it. You have to dominate it. You have to own it. And owning it costs you time. And that time cost, multiplied across dozens of corners like this, is exactly what kept the Germans from punching cleanly to the Volga in the first rush. They had the strength, they had the training, they had the armor, but they bled minutes. And minutes in Stalingrad turned into hours, and hours turned into days, and days gave the Red Army something priceless: reinforcement. If you've ever looked at a big arrow on a World War II map, those huge red or blue arrows showing big movements, you should know something. Those arrows are built out of tiny moments like this, where somebody with no sleep and a half-empty rifle made a decision under fire that bent the tempo. So yes, this sniper on this night, in this ruined stack of apartments, did what the big arrows don't tell you. He took German momentum and he broke it across his knee. That's not propaganda. That's mechanics. Now, let's go back to his breathing. He's in the new position. He's quiet. He can taste blood, his own, somewhere in his mouth from where dust and grit dried his lips and split them. He hears German voices in his old building. Clear! Clear! Boots on wood! A burst of automatic fire? Another! Another! They're dumping rounds into empty rooms to feel like they're doing something. Good. Keep wasting ammo. He's already gone. He shifts his rifle back up, scans the street again. The tank is gone. That's important. That means this push is done. They pulled the armor back. If they pulled the armor back, they're either calling for artillery to level this block, or they're rerouting. Either way, there isn't going to be a fresh infantry surge down this exact street in the next 5 minutes. Which means, for that brief slice of night, this block stands. He allows himself one exhale. One. He blinks grit out of his eyelashes. His fingers hurt. He didn't notice until now. His knuckles are raw from the rubble. He has been alive for too long, he thinks, for one evening. And now it hits him. Not pride, not fear, just weight. The weight of staying that still, that long, under that much pressure. He wipes his mouth with the back of his sleeve, leaves a gray smear on his cheekbone. He does not smile. He does not celebrate. He does not whisper, "I did it." He just resets. Because he knows stopped doesn't mean ended. He knows they'll be back. Different street maybe, different angle maybe, same hunger. But here is what changes tonight. Before tonight, this German element thought they could push this block the same way they pushed the last block and the one before that. After tonight, they do not think that. After tonight, they approach the next street slower. Slower is everything. Slower means Soviet mortars have time to set up. Slower means anti-tank hunters can crawl into sewers and wait with explosives. Slower means every meter forward hurts more than they budgeted. Slower means the machine starts grinding instead of slicing. And when the machine grinds, it dies. That is the math of Stalingrad. That is the math of a sniper. Now let's widen the frame, because this is not just one guy in one building on one night. The Red Army will build an entire mythology off moments like this, and parts of that mythology are exaggerated later. Sure, that's what countries do after wars, but the core is real. They learned something in Stalingrad. Rifles alone can become artillery if you load them with patience and discipline. One man with a scope can force an enemy platoon to burn 10 minutes. 10 minutes at the wrong time can wreck a timetable. A wrecked timetable can break an operation, and a broken operation in the right place at the right moment can shift a campaign, and a shifted campaign can bend a war. That's not romantic, that's logistics. That's timing. That's the part people don't see when they only look at tanks and flags. Down in the rubble, in the bones of the city, is where that really happened. And tonight, in this block, it's still happening. The sniper adjusts his position again, just slightly, setting up for the night phase. He changes angles so if a German tries to come up the same street under darkness with different leadership, he'll still have a line. He licks dust off his teeth and spits dark onto the cracked floor. It doesn't even wet the concrete. It just makes a darker patch of gray on gray. Somewhere not far away, someone is crying. He can't tell if it's a civilian or a wounded soldier. He doesn't turn toward it. He can't. If he lets his attention follow that sound, he might move his barrel off where it needs to be. He is not here to comfort. He is here to deny. He lies back down behind his rifle and lets his heartbeat slow. He listens to his own breath. He waits for the next shadow to move wrong. He will be here until dawn if he has to. He will not sleep. He will not eat. He will not leave. Because for this slice of night, on this one ruined street on the edge of the Volga, the line between advance and stopped is his trigger finger, and he knows it. And the German infantry, who just dragged 2 bodies out of the open and had to admit on the radio that they'd been halted by unknown sniper fire, know it too. In this war, in this city, in this hour, that's what victory looks like. Not a banner, not a flag, not a speech. Just a single rifle in the dark, telling an army, not here, not tonight, and meaning it. He settles back in, cheek to stock, eyes just over the scope, and waits. He who controls the next minute controls the next street. He who controls the next street controls the next block. He who controls the next block controls the river. He who controls the river controls the city. He who controls the city changes the war, and right now in this moment, that chain runs through one man with numb fingers, cracked lips, and a rifle older than he is. He recenters the sight picture. He breathes in through his nose, slow. He lets it out, slower. He waits for the dark to move. He gets ready to write another sentence in the night. He is not done. Night isn't quiet in Stalingrad. People call it night, but it's just a different color of danger. Flames still burn in gutted buildings, flickering orange against black brick. Somewhere deep in the industrial district, oil is burning in a cracked tank, and the smoke rolls low like an animal that won't lie down. The air tastes like metal filings and old fire. It's 2340. The block is holding, but holding is not peace. Holding is just a pause between attempts. The Germans fell back from that last push after losing their point man, their sergeant, their radio, and their nerve. That's the first punch. They always come back with a second, and that's coming now. He can feel it before he hears it. This is the part normal soldiers never have to learn. You can feel intent. The sniper stays low in his new hide, body flat in the dust between what used to be a wardrobe and part of a collapsed interior wall. The plaster rubble under his chest is digging in. Every breath feels like he's lying on broken dishes. He doesn't move. He can't afford to. If the moonlight catches his silhouette through any one of the holes blasted in these walls, that's it. His right hand is on the rifle. His left hand is on the floor, fingers splayed in grit, steadying him. He's changed positions 3 times already. He's on his 4th now. This one isn't for shooting, it's for listening. Because the next attempt isn't going to be frontal. The Germans tried that. It cost them leadership. The next attempt will be smarter, angrier, meaner. They'll try night infiltration, small team, knife and pistol, not machine gun. Slip into what they think is the sniper's building, find the nest, put a grenade in it, leave quietly. That's their plan. He intends to make them regret it. Out in the street, he hears the clatter of rubble under boots, but not in a hurry. That's just regular movement. He filters it out. Then, there, almost under him, lighter footfalls, deliberate, placed, 3 men, maybe 4, German. No Russian curses, no clank of PPSH drum magazines. This is softer, careful. He can hear the weight distribution. They're taking steps that look like this: heel, roll, toe. Men trained to move in buildings. Men who've cleared basements in Poland, stairwells in France, rooms in Belgium. Men who have killed at arm's length and will again. They slip into the blown open lower level. He doesn't aim yet. He's not shooting them in the hallway this time. He already did the stairwell trick. They'll expect that. He waits until they are inside. Waits until the first one whispers. German, low, langsam, slow. He breathes, counts. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 bodies. One of them is breathing a little louder. Adrenaline. He's not new, but he's hot. The loud breather is probably not the point man. The point man is usually quiet. He edges the rifle forward a hair at a time and puts the barrel to the crack he prepared earlier in the interior wall. This shot is going to be so tight he won't even use the scope. The range is too close, the angle too weird. He'll be shooting through a busted plaster seam into half darkness and praying trajectory, not precision. He hears boot leather on stairs. Wood creaks. He can feel the building's bones flex. They're coming up slow, muzzles first. He waits until he sees the shape of the second man, not the first. Why the second? Because the first is expecting contact. The second never is. He squeezes the trigger. The shot goes off like a hammer in a metal drum. The world inside these rooms becomes flash and noise and dust. At that distance, the bullet doesn't travel politely. It slams. It turns whatever it hits into chaos. A scream tears upward through the floor, then shouting, frantic, overlapping. German. He doesn't try a second shot. He rolls. He's already moving. He moves out of that firing slit and crawls deeper into the wrecked apartment along a path he memorized hours ago. Belly down, dragging the Mosin with one hand, pushing with his toes, ribs grinding over plaster chips and splinters and God knows what used to be someone's dining room. Behind him, the Germans unload up the stairs. Automatic bursts, pistol shots, a grenade that bounces, rolls, detonates with a concussive slam that sends dust blasting across the floor like a wave. Chunks of ceiling rain down where his lungs just were. He doesn't cough. He wants to. He doesn't. He clamps his lips shut, presses his nose into his sleeve, forces it down. The blast makes his ears ring hard enough to make him see white for a second. He keeps going. He snakes through a doorway with no door and slips behind an overturned wardrobe. There's still clothing in it, stiff with ash and dust, jackets and dresses from a life that ended in August. He presses into them, using them as a backstop. Now it's simple. Now it's patience. The Germans upstairs are angry, half-deaf, and blind in the dust. They'll fire into every shadow. They'll convince themselves they've killed him, then they'll pull out. And that's exactly what he needs. Because his purpose here is not to rack up kills like a comic book. His purpose is to stay alive, to keep doing the one thing that matters in this block. Deny forward movement. If he dies, this corner loses its spine. He can't die yet. This isn't bravado. This is his job. Boots pound above him. He can hear them kicking debris aside, swearing, dragging a wounded man back down the stairs in an ugly scrape-thump rhythm. The hurt one is breathing like a bellows. High, sharp, panicked. The Germans fall back out of the building the same way they came. Fast, low, swearing, furious. He waits through a long minute of silence, then a longer one, then longer. He counts out 70 breaths. Only then does he let his lungs unclench. He made it. He's still here. Block still stands. Time still bleeds off the German clock. He hasn't stopped the war. He doesn't think like that. He doesn't say, I saved the Soviet Union tonight. That's not how men in places like this think. And that's not how they stay sane. He just says in his head, "Not yet. Not yet you don't take this street. Not yet you don't get to the Volga. Not yet you don't cut us in half. Not yet." He closes his eyes and lets them stay closed for 2 seconds. That's as close as he'll get to sleep until dawn. Now pause. You and I get to step out of the rubble for a second and look at the board from higher up. Because this is where the phrase "stopped an entire advance" really earns itself. When we talk about Stalingrad, we tend to talk in grand strokes. The encirclement, the Sixth Army trapped, Paulus surrendering, Hitler raging. We talk about factories with names, Red October, Tractor, Barricade. We talk about not one step back and house-to-house brawls where men fought in basements while the enemy held the floor above and their own side held the floor below. That's all true, but there's a mechanical truth underneath it. By September and October 1942, the German 6th Army and elements of the 4th Panzer Army had to drive to the Volga, seal off Soviet supply lines, and split the city. That was the plan. That was the operational objective. They should have been able to do it. On paper, they had the tools: tanks, assault engineers, flamethrower teams, artillery, Luftwaffe support, infantry who'd already rolled through half of Europe and won. They should have chewed through this place like a saw through rotten wood. They didn't. Why? Because the wood wasn't rotten. The wood was bone. The bone was people like this. Let's talk about those people, these Soviet snipers, and why they mattered. By this stage of the battle, Soviet commanders had started to formalize something that had, at the start, been improvisation: independent sniper groups. Before Stalingrad, Soviet marksmanship doctrine was fine, functional. But the Red Army didn't treat snipers as centerpieces. That changed in Stalingrad. Command realized this city was a sniper's paradise. Broken lines of sight, industrial wreckage, half-fallen apartments, shattered stairwells, twisted beams, 1,000,000 hides, 1,000 angles, all inside 200 meters. In open country, a sniper might get one shot at 400 meters and then relocate across a field. In Stalingrad, you could hide within reach of your target. You could hear him breathing and kill him before he even knew you existed. So they took men who'd shown steady hands, calm under fire, and patience. Not heroes, not screamers, not guys who win medals by charging with a bayonet. Quiet men, disciplined men. Men like this one, steel nerves, slow pulse, uninterested in dying dramatically. And they gave them scopes and told them, "You are no longer infantry, you are delay." Delay is gold in Stalingrad. Delay means the Volga ferries keep running at night, bringing in more men, more ammunition, more bread, more anti-tank rifles, more sappers. Delay means command can shift a reserve platoon where it's needed instead of watching it get cut off before it moves. Delay means a German battalion commander has to radio upstairs, "We're behind schedule again," and upstairs has to radio further upstairs with excuses instead of victories. Delay means what you're hearing right now. That German push, that wasn't just a patrol. That was a planned forward probe, meant to wedge open the line in this sector. It was supposed to roll fast, crack this block, split the Soviet defenders, open a path to the waterfront. It didn't, because of one guy with a bolt-action rifle and no backup plan except, don't be seen twice in the same hole. That's what stopped an entire advance really means. The plan stopped. The timetable stopped. The forward motion stopped. The idea that we can take this block tonight stopped. It all stopped on a single street because one man took out leadership, communications, and momentum in the span of a few minutes, and then survived long enough to prevent the revenge sweep from clearing him. That's not myth. That's battlefield math. One other thing, something small that almost nobody outside the people in that building would ever learn: the psychological fracture. After this night, the Germans who survived that block will never walk another ruined street in Stalingrad the same way again. Before tonight, they walked under that thin layer of professional confidence. Yes, it's hell, but we're the best in the world at this, and we're winning. After tonight, a whisper lives in the back of their skull. Any window, any shadow, Any lump of plaster could be the end of me, and I won't even see who did it. That's not just fear. That's erosion. Erosion of morale, erosion of pace, erosion of trust in your own invincibility. And that erosion, multiplied across company after company, is what starts turning shock troops into exhausted men who hesitate at doorways. Hesitation is oxygen for defenders. On the Soviet side, the opposite happens. Word will spread. Not officially. Nobody's writing press releases in a building with no roof, but by rumor. It was held. How? Sniper, just one, still there? Yes. That story doesn't stay in that building. That story moves through whispers, through runners, through field phones that barely work, through half-standing basement command posts where everyone is smoking bitter tobacco out of stress and hunger and pretending it's normal. And now men who are down to their last 2 drum mags and half a loaf of stale bread and 1 working canteen cap here. They stopped them on Tractor Street, 1 sniper held. That is fuel. That is proof you can make the impossible bend. In a battle where men are sleeping in coal bins and eating soup boiled in shell casings, that kind of proof keeps them on their feet. So yeah, it's bigger than 1 block. It's always bigger than 1 block. Let's return to him, just for a moment, because I want you to see how this night ends. It's 2:10 now. The Volga wind is colder. He can feel it through the torn wall. It sneaks in and puts its fingers under the back of his collar. He hasn't fired a shot in over an hour. He hasn't heard German movement in several minutes. That's not normal. You don't get true quiet here, not for long. He could relax. He doesn't. He knows better. Here's the final test. At 2:14, he hears something that is not boots and not tank tracks and not shouting. He hears metal scraping on brick. Slow, grinding, dragging. It's an engineer team. German combat engineers. Pioneers. They're not coming to clear him. They're coming to reshape the street. He eases forward, peeks through his new angle. Barely a slit between 2 stovepipes and a fallen beam. He sees them. 3 shapes. Low. Carrying something long and heavy between them. At first he thinks flamethrower. But no. Too rigid. Too straight. It's charges. Satchel charges. Demolition packs. They're going to collapse the building he's in. Not kill him room by room. Kill the entire structure and bury him in it. Smart. Brutal. Efficient. They've learned. He lines up. He knows he'll only get 1 shot before they dive. He aims not at the man in front, not even at the middle. He aims at the satchel. Because if that pack goes off early, in the open, in their own hands, that's the end of this attempt before it begins. He slows his heart. He presses his cheekbone to the stock so hard it aches. He breathes out. Not all the air, just enough to relax. He squeezes. The rifle bucks, louder in the dead hour, echoing between the bones of buildings like a shout down a grave. Down below, the satchel drops. For 1 impossible half-second, it just lands. Then it blows. The blast lifts dust like a curtain. It flashes yellow-white against brick, throws 2 bodies back against a half wall, and turns the third into a shape the eye doesn't want to follow. The concussion punches him even from here. He feels it in his teeth. And just like that plan dies. No charges, no collapse. Building stands. Sniper lives. Block holds. Advance. Denied again. That was the last serious attempt of the night. After that, the Germans pull back and call for artillery instead. Not immediate. That'll come hours later when the sun is gray and the Stalingrad sky turns the color of old wool. They'll drop shells in and try to turn the whole block into powder. But that's later. That's morning business. For now, for tonight, everything stops. The street goes into that strange Stalingrad quiet where nothing moves except smoke. He lowers the rifle, finally. His arms are shaking now, not from fear, from muscle fatigue, from holding steel and wood steady for hours under adrenaline. He lays the Mosin across his lap and just lets his hands hang off his knees for a few seconds until the tremor fades. He blinks grit out of his eyelashes, tries to rub his eyes clean and only grinds more dust in. Gives up. He shifts his back against the wardrobe and his spine pops. It hurts in the warm way that means still alive. He finally pulls the dead cigarette stub out of his mouth. He looks at it like it's a familiar animal that sat quietly with him through the night. He lets it drop. Somewhere outside, down the block, someone on his side whistles twice. Short, sharp, prearranged. That's friendly code, not words. Words carry. Whistles bounce funny in rubble and are hard to aim at. Two whistles back answer. That means, you're still there, I'm still here, we still own this corner. He lets out a breath, and for the first time all night, he allows himself the tiniest smile. It's not joy, it's permission. Permission to still be alive. Permission to know, quietly, privately, with no drum roll, that he just did something that will ripple far outside this ruin. Not in his name. No one's writing his name in gold right now. Maybe ever. But in effect, in consequence, in reality. By dawn, German reports in that sector will say, advance temporarily halted due to heavy sniper activity, significant resistance, request additional support. By dawn, Soviet notes will say, enemy blocked, position held through night, reinforcements arriving across river. Those two sentences, that's his work. That's his handwriting, even if someone else puts the ink down. He leans his head back against the wardrobe and stares up at what used to be a ceiling and is now just broken beams and a dark sky with no stars, because the smoke is too thick to let any through. He thinks, not in big concepts, not in patriotic slogans, just in the simplest form. Another hour bought, another hour they didn't get through. And in Stalingrad in 1942, that's victory. That's all victory is, an hour. He doesn't think about medals. He doesn't think about what historians will say decades later when they talk about the stubborn Soviet defense that ground the German advance to a halt. He doesn't think about how this night turns into a rule, and that rule turns into a doctrine, and that doctrine trains a next wave of snipers, and that wave bleeds the enemy again and again and again until the push toward the Volga cools from a sprint into a crawl and then into a stall. He doesn't think about the big picture because he can't. The human brain isn't built to carry the Eastern Front on no sleep and half a canteen. He thinks about reloading. He thinks about water. He thinks about not dying before the sun comes up. He brings the rifle back up, just in case, and keeps watch through the last hours of darkness. Now I'm going to fast forward for you, because you and I get the luxury of seeing what he can't. Weeks later, the German advance in Stalingrad stops being an advance and turns into desperate street fighting. That's the wording in their own reports. Desperate, they lose pace, then they lose blood, then they get encircled, and then, months later, they surrender. Everybody remembers the surrender. Everybody remembers the photographs. Gaunt men in greatcoats, frost in their beards, hands up, eyes gone flat. Everybody remembers Paulus surrendering an entire German army. Something Hitler swore would never happen. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. The surrender didn't begin with a white flag in January. It began with minutes stolen in September. It began with a broken street that didn't fall on schedule. It began with little pockets of no that calcified into "you shall not pass," until what was supposed to be a clean thrust to the river turned into a meat grinder that chewed the entire 6th Army down to bone and left it surrounded in the winter with no way out. Those stolen minutes, he helped steal them. He bought them, with breath discipline, with bone still patience, with the courage to stay after the first shot and the second and the third, with the decision not to run, with the decision not to die for drama, with the decision to live for delay. That is not a lesser kind of heroism. That is the kind that wins wars. We love clean stories. Flag on the hill, charge across the field, tank bursting through the line. That's not what saved Stalingrad. What saved Stalingrad, and by extension cracked the German war machine in the East, was this: numb fingers on cold steel, eyes that did not blink, a rifle in the dark. One man saying, "Not this street," and making that stick. When people tell the story later, sometimes with names, sometimes without, they'll say a Soviet sniper stopped an entire German advance in one night. And maybe that sounds like a legend. But now you know what it looked like. It looked like a shattered room with no roof. It looked like concrete dust in your teeth. It looked like a cigarette stub held in your mouth like a piece of resolve. It looked like blood on the stair treads and whispers over brick. It looked like a tank backing up 2 meters because nobody wanted to take one more step forward under that invisible crosshair. Above all, it looked like time being stolen from an army that thought it owned the clock. That's the quiet math of turning a war. He doesn't get a parade. He doesn't get sleep. He doesn't even get clean water tonight. He just gets to keep breathing. He just gets to keep aiming. He just gets to hear 2 short whistles in the dark that mean, we're still here. And that, in this city, on this night, is the definition of victory. So when someone asks how one sniper could stop an advance in World War II, you can tell them, he didn't stop the whole war. He stopped a street, and that street stopped a block, and that block held a riverbank, and that riverbank kept a city alive, and that city broke an army, and that broken army broke the spine of a dream that was supposed to reach past the Volga and never did. That's how. In the end, nothing cinematic, no trumpet, just a man in the dark, cheek on cold wood, eyes on ruin, whispering without sound, not here, not tonight, and keeping his promise.